We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. Fellas. Game week!
I didn't know he was going to do that either. Anthony Vito, our producer, is mixing that one down so that nobody crashes their car while they're listening to that.
Jesus. That was unnecessary.
Game week. Game week. Game week. Game
Where were you
week,
last weekend?
Game week.
Where were you last weekend?
Game week. Game week.
I do my best behind the scenes to assuage our hardcores that Richard is not as NFL Power 2, Big 2 minded, and then you completely ignore a week of football.
If you can call what happened on Saturday.
What did you watch? How much did you watch?
I watched I watched the whole thing on Saturday. But that was charitably
wait.
a fucking win
There were many
sprint.
games on.
That was charitably a fucking win sprint.
What else did you watch anything?
I live in America, so I don't have the Pac-12 network. And I did watch. I watched.
Well, you used to work for the SEC network, and they had a football game.
That got delayed, and then I went to dinner.
Yeah, I was there.
Week 0 did happen. Some quick impressions. Richard, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, we're playing a year 1 Navy team in Ireland, so it was an unfair home field advantage for the Fighting Irish, but looked pretty good. I think about as good as you would want for Sam Hartman and the fellas.
On offense, way better from Notre Dame than I thought they were going to be in the run game. I didn't there's a difference between thinking Notre Dame was going to be good in the run game and watching Notre Dame score on every possession. I think they pushed Navy around. They only scored 30 points on Navy last year. It's not like Navy rolls over for this team. I'm not going to go.
I think this Navy might roll over for quite a few folks, and that's why we'll talk about this later in the show with Notre Dame's next opponent. I get it. Nature abhors a vacuum, and we have to have a talking point every second that we're awake now. Let's just not do a Notre Dame thing quite yet, because
I was basically
as our friend Spencer
say,
Hall said, Navy might be turbo bad.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Godfrey. It became apparent 3 possessions in this game. This is a fucking scrimmage.
Yeah.
That was bad. So yeah, they looked really good. They're going to look really good on Saturday. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Sam Hartman, we'll see. I don't really have much beyond that.
No need to at this point. Still week 0 going into week 1. Well, now it's week 1. Also from week 0, I think one of the better, more enticing games of the weekend was San Diego State hosting Ohio. Unfortunately, it got a lot less enticing. Curtis Rourke, the Ohio quarterback, whom we've talked about quite a bit, left this game early, back up through 3 interceptions in a 20-13 loss. Remember that Rourke had an ACL problem, tear, and was out for the end of last year, basically the entire stretch drive of last year. And so it's about as unfortunate, upsetting a start as you could have for the Bobcats and for those of us hoping that Ohio with Rourke will be a really fun part of the MAC this year. Hope he's okay. Hope that still happens, but it just wasn't good to start. As far as San Diego State goes, solid win, but maybe not that encouraging to win 20-13 at home against a team whose best player by far was not participating. But you'll take it. 20 points for San Diego State, actually not that few.
Alex, they're the injury thing is, I think they were being overly cautious because of the previous injury.
I hope so. That would be very good news. In the nightcap, actually there were a few games at night, but USC doubled up San Jose State 56-28. We're going over just a few here that we had particular notes on. Fellas, I told you that I would be sighing if I looked up in the third quarter and San Jose State had 21 points. They wound up with 28. Part of that's because USC scored immediately, including on special teams, very, very quickly, several times in this game. But yeah, still wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of defense. I believe that's what it's called, being played in Los Angeles.
Or line play.
At the Coliseum.
Just line play.
They do have another guy, Richard. Zachariah Branch for USC is going to be he's going to be one of these guys. I have a feeling.
Yeah, he's going to be an issue.
Steven, you were at a football game on Saturday.
Yeah, you actually, you just misspoke, Alex. USC was not the nightcap because it ended, I believe, before Vanderbilt and Hawaii did. And that is because at essentially a glorified construction site in the middle of Nashville, Tennessee, there was a almost full 2-hour lightning delay in the area. It was one of those incredibly just technical sort of situations where it was on the cusp of the range at which you cannot have the outdoor event played within the perimeter area. In fact, it wasn't even raining for the first hour of the delay. Then the rain came in, and then Vanderbilt's defense never showed up. I mean, my takeaways here: Hawaii's magnificent relative to their situation. Magnificent. Are they going to win a lot of games this year? Nope. Are they doing something? Are they acquitting themselves better than they did in a horrific year one with the situation under Chimichang? Absolutely. That dude, if they scratched out 4 or 5 wins this year somehow, and by the way, they have enough of an offense to maybe do that in the Mountain West, that guy should win Coach of the Year. I don't think people realize the circumstances at that university. However, this is week 0 that we're talking about, so I'm not going to draw a ton of inferences, except that Vanderbilt secondary was not good. They came very close to losing this game, if not for a late interception. Could not really dictate pace against a Mountain West team that really kind of had to throw the ball. Could not grind them out. The obvious metaphor that every columnist made was that hey, everything's under construction on West End Avenue, but it definitely is. Clark Lee is under the old school Pat Fitzgerald sort of expectation arc where it's you can take 5 years, you can take 6 years, and it's going to take that long for Vanderbilt to look different. Better being the operative word.
One other thing, FIU and Louisiana Tech played what I understand to be among one of the stranger box scores, maybe in the recent history of the sport, in which they're producing one of the strangest box scores in the history of the sport. FIU's quarterback went 5 of 14 for 4 yards and 1 interception. That 1 interception came on the last possession of the game when they had the ball with at least theoretically a chance to drive and win this game. They lost by possession.
Big win for Louisiana Tech.
Want to shout out I don't know if it's shouting out. We'll frame it this way. Jacksonville State, you're an FBS team now. You won an FBS game against a conference opponent. Do y'all know what UTEP did to lose this game? I want so
Gavin
badly
Hardison
when they
threw
line up
a couple of picks. Tell me, you have something more specific?
So it's 17-14. It's I think under a minute at this point. They're in plus territory. They're driving. It's 4th and 1. And I need to set this up because I'm periodically checking in during the Vanderbilt rain delay on this game. Just happened to find this one on my iPad, whatever. And UTEP will come out and do this kind of junky Bill Snyder offensive weird stuff because Dana Dimmel's a K-State guy. So they run and shout out to Tom Fernelli who nailed this perfectly. They would come out and do a bunch set, it looked like a rugby wedge. And I was laughing about oh, this is the kind of stuff that makes me fall in love with an offense because it's triple-ish and all this stuff. And then Tom Fernelli on Twitter said, oh, we should call that the pickaxe. And I was like, yes, we should. So they're doing all this fun stuff. The problem is they can't get pushed to get yardage in those situations. So I guess, and this is where I'm going, this is what led them to on 4th and 1 with the game on the line, down 3 in plus territory to throw the ball, which normally I'm fine with. You be inventive, be creative on offense. Except my guy he doesn't throw to the flat. It's not a screen. It's not a pitch. They sort of line up and get big, and then he throws very slowly, I might add, across his body down the field. It was absolutely just unbelievable. And Jacksonville State intercepts it. It ends up being kind of a wounded duck of a pass, and that was the game. Very hurtful as someone who's trying to be a UTEP fan.
Godfrey, I will say, Gavin Hardison, the quarterback from UTEP, I'm gonna have a quarter of an eye on that young man here for a couple games moving forward. He's got a fucking cannon.
Yeah. It was a big week for Jackson and Jacksonville State. It's a great week to be a Jackson something state. In the MEAC SWAC Challenge, blowout win for TC Taylor and the Tigers against SC State, which had beaten them in the Celebration Bowl a couple years earlier. And it's yet another reminder that Jackson State has previously won a great many football games under coaches who weren't Deion Sanders. I think that some people might have made some assumptions about, Deion rolls out. He takes so many transfers with him. It's going to suddenly be a wasteland.
Also,
Jackson State.
Wait a second.
He did take a ton.
That's also not that was not like beyond the pale.
No, it wasn't.
To assume.
I just
like,
want to be clear. I just want to be clear that Jackson State still has, in my opinion.
What's your theory? Wait, what's your theory here? Are we going anti-Dion here? I'm very confused.
I guess slightly.
No.
I am a little bit. Just a smidge.
Oh,
just a smidge.
JSU can bottom out. Like
they could
right,
bottom
that's
out
sort of what I was
within their
saying.
capability.
Yeah, that's what
I guess the thrust of the reason why I'm kind of bringing up this, why I'm just kind of beating around the bush or being a little bit snarky about this is that there was, and I think Dion contributed to this with his whole like, oh, I'm coming to lift these guys up type of thing that he was doing at Jackson State. Jackson State's got how many Pro Football Hall of Famers? Like how many Black National Championships? Like we'll see. They can build these guys back up.
But they can also suck and have like
and they
pretty
have
hard too, Alex. Like
all of these things can be true.
As a longtime Mississippian, I can tell you they can get under the basement. Like it's possible. However,
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not trying to rebuke you, but like.
No, rebuke me, Steven.
All of
It's week
Dion's
one.
shit works at JSU. No, like all of Dion's shit worked at JSU.
Oh, it worked amazingly.
We'll talk about
It worked. It
TCU,
was
Colorado, but yeah,
It was one of the
it's
best
just
coaching jobs in the
not-
country the last 2 years.
It's just maybe not going to work at a perennial 2-win Pac-12 team. That's all.
We'll get to
Well,
it.
for now.
That's week 0. Now it's week 1. Incredibly exciting. I know what I'm doing for my Friday night, week 1, Steven.
I know what we're making Richard do.
Come to Minnesota where it's cold. Actually, it's gonna be pretty nice weather. I think
cold.
the lakes.
It's not. It's going to be like
lakes-
it's going to be
the
perfect.
lakes in September,
Labor Day is when you want to visit.
Oh,
Minnesota.
exactly. I was going to
Trust me.
say, I agreed to a
Yeah.
live show in September. I didn't agree to a live
Yeah.
show in January.
Yeah, Richard's from Florida. I'm redneck from Georgia. If we're gonna hit Minnesota, it's gonna be like now, and then we'll catch y'all in April. Okay, but we are excited to go to Minneapolis for the live show. I think we have I don't even know, like single digit amount of tickets left, if that. SplitsOnDuoLive.com. You can check there. We'll see y'all. Home field will be there. Our friends at Nokian are driving the event. We want to thank Nokian Tires. I will be with Nokian VIPs on Saturday, boys, at the Built for Godfrey event, I guess, a FCS neutral site game in the Viking Stadium between Eastern Washington and North Dakota State. Lots to talk about on the home field show. We got a couple surprises. If you are coming, I'm going to enlist your help on a little project I have with a particular team in Florida. I don't really want to say anything else, boys. I will say this. If you are attending the show, you will have a chance to win a free set of Nokian tires. Very, very nice, very expensive tires, as well as some other cool stuff. Very excited to see y'all there. We're building the show right now. We're very excited.
I'm going to also be there on Thursday night for Nebraska and Minnesota. Chance to check out the opening of the Matt Rule era and the continuation of the PJ Fleck era. I actually don't have a specific parking lot plan other than I think I'm going to be with some Nokian and home field pals before this game. But email us if you're going to be there and you want to hang out. Podcast@splitsonduo.com. Love being in the lots before season opener.
If you are listening to this podcast in the Minneapolis area and you graduated from the flagship university of the state of Florida based in Gainesville, holler at your boy, because I don't have any watch plans.
Do it at Tom's Watch Bar.
I may go to Tom's Watch Bar. We'll be close.
Thanks to our friends at Tom's Watch Bar for hosting us on this event, because I have done a virtual tour. It's very nice. It is filled with very nice food and beer. It will be a perfect setting for us to regale you with our college football knowledge and maybe some form of humorous banter. Richard, watch Utah, Florida at Tom's. If you're going to Pearl Jam, I'll be there. I'm pretty easy to spot. I'm very
that's
tall,
what you're doing on
and I
Thursday
look
night,
like
okay.
this. I'm doing that on Thursday night, yes.
Dividing and conquering on Thursday night. Yeah.
We are all over the Twin Cities on Thursday night. Alex is going to be at Minnesota, Nebraska. I am going to not subject myself to that brand of rebuilding Big Ten football. I'm going to go see Pearl Jam. Richard, you're going to be in downtown Minneapolis looking for some Gators. Or what if you find some Utes? Would you watch the game with some Utes? What if, all right, I'm really going to hijack this segment now. What if you're at Tom's Watch Bar and you're by yourself and you're just looking for a crowd and then you see maybe some SEC people, but it's like Georgia and Tennessee fans?
That might be worse. That objectively might
Are you going to have your Gator stuff on? Your home field Gator stuff?
I'll probably wear a Florida t-shirt made by our friends at Home Field Apparel.
Alex, Spotify. I don't listen to our show because I'm not a serial killer, But if you do listen to our show and you're on Spotify, what has just happened with Patreon? Because apparently a lot of people are very
this is
excited.
good if you're a Patreon subscriber, which thousands of you are, and we thank you very much for making this show possible.
Patreon.com/SZD, Patreon.com/SZD.
Our sort of tech overlords at Patreon have come up with an integration with Spotify, so you can now listen to the Splits Into a Patreon feed on Spotify. I think the simplest, easiest way to set it up would just be to go to the regular Split Zone Duo Spotify page if you listen to the episodes that way, and you'll see the bonus feed right below it. You click on it, you'll go through the Patreon app, it'll set up, it'll be nice and easy. One of our constant things is making sure that people know how easy it is to set up podcast feeds on the Patreon to get that feed, and that is a tremendous breakthrough for us that we now have that available. Also, Godfrey and Richard, this is exciting. We are starting up a free newsletter because we want to be as confusing as possible. This is separate from the Patreon. This is just a way to get free writing
It's not confusing at all. It's not.
It's actually not confusing.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just being self-deprecating.
I'm taking him off the sales floor. All right, I got it.
I'm
Ready?
being self-deprecating.
So we have a newsletter called Mesh Point. You go to splitzoneduo.com. It's not complicated at all. You just give us your email so we can have it. Go to splitzoneduo.com, sign up for Mesh Point. So what Mesh Point's going to be, if you are a patron, what Alex was referring to is you get messages via Patreon sometime. This is our way to communicate directly with you guys. We will have all of the information on upcoming live shows, new merchandise, which, by the way, we have new merchandise over at splitzoneduo.com. Click on merch. Richard, could you hold up something that you were holding earlier? Richard, you got a little bit of... Oh, my gosh! Richard, what's that?
That's an SCD mug. I will say this is not the final of the SCD mug.
That was one of the prototypes, wasn't it?
This was a prototype SCD mug,
prototype.
And for the YouTube audience, we'll
Beautiful.
screen cap this and put it on Twitter or something. I don't know.
We have new merchandise. You can check that out at splitzoneduo.com. It's the same place you can sign up for Mesh Point. You will get all the information on new merchandise, new live events, new home field merch from us, specials. I'm leaving something out. Oh, and also original written content. When we have stuff that doesn't fit in the milieu of the SCD universe, we're going to stick it in the Mesh Point newsletter. Go there, sign up.
You'll be glad you
Alex,
did.
Not complicated at all.
You're right. Wasn't complicated at all. And do that even if you're a Patreon subscriber, because we are not going to harvest your email address from one to the other because we don't want to do that. Stephen, you are doing some important writing in the Washington Post. You should check out. You can read Richard at Sports Illustrated. You can read me at Slate. We are all over the place and in even more places than I just mentioned.
If you are, so yes, I started with the Washington Post as a columnist back in everything is college. My co-host lived this way too, so I don't have to explain it to them. My entire life does not become like, oh, it's October 3rd. No, it's week whatever. And that's how I live my life until January. So in week -1, I started at the Washington Post as a college football columnist. If you would like to read that, they do have this funny thing called a paywall because it turns out money for journalism is a good way for journalism to persist. WashingtonPost.com/SZD, WashingtonPost.com/SZD. You can sign up there specifically and then let people know you're coming to the Washington Post because of this podcast. Obviously, that would make us look, basically like I would say, trend-setting influencers that we are.
Kingmakers, if you will. Yeah.
Correct. You're welcome, Bezos.
We keep Jeff Bezos afloat at the Washington Post. And I don't think I said it, but the promo code for Homefield at homefieldapparel.com, if you have not made your first order there yet, is SCD20. We're very excited to have Homefield again at the live show, bringing some party gifts that you can only get if you come. That's SCD20 for 20% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Folks, it's time, and there's a reason, by the way, that we recorded this episode on a Monday morning. Typically during the season, you can expect to get this episode on Wednesdays, and you can, of course, expect to get, starting this week, the Hurry Up with Richard and me, a 30-minute or so detailed pack speed run through the week on Sunday mornings. But we're doing this on Monday because, frankly, we've already talked this thing to death, and there's not much to talk about now other than the games themselves that are coming in week 1. We want to give you a long week to get excited about them.
We also have to travel this week, too.
I was going to say, let's not lie to the live studio.
I wasn't lying, but you're right. That probably was also why we did this.
We all got to get to Minnesota. One of us has 3 kids. Week 1 is, it's a lot.
So this is the maximalist week 1 tasting menu, where we are going to get into dozens of games that are on the schedule between Thursday and Saturday. All times are Central. That's God's time. I have put bullet points for all of these games for each of us to basically share anything that we want to share with you about what's going to happen in week 1 of the 2023 season. And we start on Thursday night at 6 p.m. God's time. That's Central Time on FS1, Kent State and the Big 12's UCF Knights.
Very excited for you guys. Welcome to the Big 12. I'm going to be in touch soon because I don't have a jersey yet. Where is my space jersey? I want my space jersey.
You know, I don't think I've told you guys this, but I have been to, in the last couple of years, a lot of fun crossover weddings. Like, I've been to Jewish Italian weddings. I've been to Jewish Mexican weddings. I've been to Jewish Protestant weddings.
Every combination just getting
louder.
louder.
Let me tell you about a wedding that I went to just a couple of days ago. I went to the most diverse wedding I've ever been to. Wedding. I went to a Harvard UCF wedding this past weekend.
God damn.
I told you the payoff would be worth it. Just trust me. Just stick with me. I went to a Harvard UCF wedding so you could kind of tell, the sides of the room, like, whose background is whose.
I bet you could.
Yeah.
What was the faith structure, if I can ask? Or can I guess?
Everyone looked great. It was a beautiful time.
Don't dodge the question.
I'm dodging that. What
was the faith?
I am dodging it hard.
Was it interfaith? Was it interfaith? Was it interfaith?
Yes, except UCF someone is converting. Yeah.
UCF fans, no, God, I won't see heaven.
Wow.
I don't know if
I'm never going to get this jersey. I
don't know if Kent State has enough left on offense to poke at this UCF team. Theoretically, you would think that they could in a different reality, i.e. last year. Remember, they poked quite hard at the Georgia Bulldogs in Athens. So let's see. Probably don't have enough, but hey, we're all along for the ride.
Gus Malzahn offense, modern Gus Malzahn offense in the Big 12, probably the most intriguing thing I want to see in the conference other than can Texas just not poop its britches this year? That's probably like I wasn't on the Big 12 preview, but like the application of what Gus can do with Florida talent, all the resources that have been taken by force in Orlando, and then applying that to the Big 12. It is very interesting. On the Kent State side, Richard alluded to it. Guys, how many times in the preview did we say the phrase, oh, yeah, and they got a receiver from Kent? It was a fucking fire sale. It was a fire sale in
or a
Northeast
running
Ohio
back from Kent.
Lewis left this program.
Or a coach from Kent.
Like,
they got emptied out.
So
they got emptied out.
Portal era Mac is going to be defined by like wildly sharp turns in the fortunes of programs as not even just head coaches, but coordinators and even quarterbacks come and go. And so, we're used to waxing and waning through eras like, oh, Miami's good. They've got this guy. Oh, okay. Like Toledo's having an era. It's going to be even more jagged as we go along.
NC State at UConn. That's NC State at UConn, 6:30 CBS SN.
Fuck Jim Mora.
NC State is Devin Leary-less, obviously. It's Brennan Armstrong's show right now. Let's see what this offense looks like. UConn, we have been bullish on UConn on this podcast. I don't think Godfrey this was the Independence preview, so Godfrey was not on this podcast when we said it's bowl time for UConn. It's I think, within the realm of possibility, and honestly, not even much of a stretch. Now, is beating NC State a stretch? Certainly,
yes.
But I do think that let's see UConn acquit itself.
Let's see it. Richard, giving you a chance to talk about this one, I want you to lead us here at the game that you're going to be watching on Thursday night. Obviously, the fight in Florida Gators with a tough one at the reigning Pac-12 champs, ×2.
Under the radar in this game, neither Brant Keithy nor Cam Rising are officially, as of Monday morning, cleared for this game. Now, Cam Rising he's been limited in camp. He has played in camp. I don't think Brant Keithy has been cleared at all to play. So pay attention to that as the week goes on. This could certainly be Kyle Whittingham gamesmanship leading up to a week 1 spot. I'm not at all ruling that out, but if they're not playing in this game, that changes the makeup of this game. I think this is a litmus test for Florida early, right from the gate, to how tough are you going to be this season? Because this is a Florida team that I do not expect to be able to air it out, damn the torpedoes, put up 45 through the air. They're not building that. I do think there's a reality where they build themselves to be something of a defense run the ball changeup. They have a great running back room, have 2 great running backs. And the joke that I've been making is Wisconsin light or Wisconsin South as Graham Mertz takes over at QB1. So they don't get much better as far as tests of physicality than this Utah team at altitude on a Thursday night when that place is going to be fucking bonkers. So let's pay attention. Let's look. I certainly will be watching. Let's see it.
Richard, I don't want to. This is officially the party line stance of Split Zone Duos. We no longer doubt and absolutely and totally respect the Utah Utes. However, is the antidote to what Utah does to programs like Oregon and USC, is it to give them their own medicine, which Florida has? Look, I go back to the way I'm looking at Florida, the way I was told to look at Florida is just take that Louisiana trajectory and the styles that he like the way that the offense looked in year 1, 2, 3, 4 at Louisiana.
For Billy Napier.
That's what he wants to do for Billy Napier. So Big Smashy is kind of like how they took over the Sun Belt. Now, does that apply to the SEC? We're not going to go there today, Richard. However, is the antidote to what Utah can do to you physically is to do the same thing back with better athletes.
Yeah, because if you can get to a spot where you're like, remember, it's not like Utah scored 40 points on this team last year. Remember that. No. I know, like Utah left some points on the table in that game and arguably probably should have scored to win it at the very end there. Ventrell Miller had a great interception, made a great play to win the game when Utah looked like it was driving. So, but again, it's a Utah thing where they're never as good in September as they are in November. That is the thing. So if you are going to get Utah, you certainly want to get them early on any schedule.
With the health stuff that you just mentioned.
And yes, and then you sprinkle in the health stuff that is at least in the margins here because of the status of those 2 great players.
Counter programming for that game, the one I am going to be at, Nebraska, Minnesota, 7 on Fox. I think it's a clash between a pretty known quantity and a very unknown quantity. Minnesota, I think we understand how they're going to play and that there's going to be a baseline of competency here that is reasonably high. I mean, this is a solid 8-win program and up right now under PJ Fleck. And I think that even as they charge into the post-Tanner Morgan era, that will, I think, continue. Like, I would still expect this to be a solid bowl team. They're going to try to run you over. They're going to play decent defense. They're going to throw the ball to their tight end, Brevin Spanford, and be the same similar product that you have come to expect from a Fleck Minnesota team. On the other hand, I have no clue what to expect in this game from Nebraska. I'm thrilled for you, Nebraska fans, that you didn't have to play in week 0. I wish you got to at least get to Saturday of week 1, because if they lose this game, it's going to be yet another year, 3 in a row, where games are kicking off in week 1 with Nebraska already 0-1. I expect them to lose this game. It would be incredibly uplifting if they didn't. But what I would really just like to see from Nebraska is that like saltiness, that prickliness that Matt Rule teams are known for giving you. I don't expect it to be a finished product. I don't know. Richard, I'm curious what you think of Jeff Sims being the quarterback in Nebraska now. That guy got just physically destroyed at Georgia Tech. Like, they never gave him safety. He did not know a moment of peace there. I tend to believe in Rule's ability to cobble together better pass pro than he's ever had in his career at Georgia Tech. So maybe we see something there.
Yeah, I think I'm curious here. I am about what Jeff Sims can be. I don't know about in this game. I think it may be a little early, but I'm curious. I'm curious to see if there's a resurgence. I'm curious to see if new surroundings are good for him.
We're going to see that. We go to Friday. This is at 6 on the ACC network. And by the way, we're not being maximalist here. We're not being totally maximalist. There are some more nightcap games. We're not doing every FCS game and every cupcake, every paycheck game that is being put on the schedule. But we go to Friday here. This one we are doing the Miami Bowl between Miami and Miami. This game is at Miami. Brett Gabbert is healthy for Miami after a lot of injuries.
Jesus Christ.
Is he, after one specific injury that cost him most of last year, is he the best quarterback in this game? Like, does Miami have the best quarterback
Damn.
in this game.
Enough.
Wow.
All right.
Gosh.
Enough.
People are asking.
Enough.
Okay. I'll do this
I like
one.
Miami.
I'll do this
I do.
one.
I think Miami has a.
Oh,
I really like
my
Miami.
God.
All right. Okay. All right. Kill the bit. All right. We killed it. It's dead. It's dead. I would really like to see, if I'm a fan of the program from Coral Gables, like, sure would like to see Tyler Van Dyke carve up a defense. Sure would like to, like, you know, maybe have 4 touchdowns and a comfortable lead throughout this thing, because look, Alex, you're talking about what cupcake and paycheck games do and don't get mentioned. This is a team that got absolutely handled at home by Middle Tennessee State last year. Tyler Van Dyke was broken. Luxury vehicle run into, just absolutely mauled on a series of curbs. Would be nice if whatever was plaguing you with Josh Gaddis got flushed immediately. New OC, new DC. You know, we've hit this enough over 9 months of an offseason, but Mario Cristobal did everything I didn't expect him to do in year one. There was no competency, consistency, or even hand, which is what you expected in a seasoned head coach who is from the program, who played in the program, who went to the Saban finishing school. These guys need a year 2 refresh, maybe more than any other year 2 program I can think of.
I expect Miami to be a lot better up front, which means Miami is going to be a lot better. That offensive line is significantly rigid.
I would hope.
A lot of stars, like a couple 5 stars, multiple coming in.
I mean, I'm not being glib, Richard,
2
but
new
like,
tackles. Gotta be
the head coach was also an O-line coach and an O-lineman, and they were like, maybe that was the worst unit last year.
They had some injuries. I'm not trying to make excuses for it, but there were a couple reasons why that was not where it needed to be. I do expect it to be a lot better. Like Alex's bit aside, the Miami I'm talking about, is not going to lose this game.
No.
They're going to be fine, but you would like them to be a lot better up front. You'd like to see, because I think that helps Tyler Van Dyke. I don't think Tyler Van Dyke is a quarterback because he ain't running. So I don't think Tyler Van Dyke is a quarterback who, if under pressure, game speeds up, yada, 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 that you really love in that spot. So you can keep him back there looking like a statue, and you may have something.
Look,
speaking of bad O-lines,
Miami against the spread, I like Miami, and we'll leave it there. Louisville at Georgia Tech, 6:30 ESPN.
Stop.
The quarterbacks in this game are Jack Plummer and Haynes King. Do you, the listener, or either of you, know which teams they are respectively playing for? Jack Plummer and Haynes King.
Well, I mean, it's sort of my job to know, but I don't think the average listener.
That does not mean anything in our new transfer portal reality.
Right. This one is just one of those musical chair situations.
We did like a 7-week season preview. I had to learn something.
I do
Y'all
know
are the
now,
ones who
but
made me do it.
Right, it would be reasonable not to know, even if you work in the sport. You can't. There's too many players. You can't know everything. But yeah, Richard Haynes King is quarterback for Georgia Tech now. I don't know why that intrigues me more than, or Jack Plummer being at Louisville, why that intrigues me maybe a touch more than any of the dozens of quarterback transfer moves this year. Probably because they're both paired with new head coaches as well. So I'm curious. I don't know if I have really any take, but I am curious.
I think Georgia Tech has a very decent chance to be very bad on defense. So that is something that I'm going to be paying attention to see if they're like replacement level on defense. If they can figure out a way to kind of scrape up to average with some of the pieces that they lost, all right, right direction. Don't know that that's going to happen.
Also Friday, Stanford at Hawaii. This one is a true nightcapper, I believe, because it's at Hawaii. CBSSN.
This is
10 Central.
It's going to be way more interesting than I thought. After sitting through that game, by the way, most of that game, shout out to my friends at Vanderbilt. I did have to leave because I just want to share this aside very quickly. My wife was out of town, so your boy had to get a babysitter to go sit in the press box for Hawaii and Vanderbilt. Never, ever doubt my commitment to this operation. So at 2-hour rain delay or 2-hour lightning delay, obviously I had to leave at halftime. But
has the Vandy, the stadium situation, I know construction site jokes. Like at what level of progress are we talking here?
They're on schedule as far as what I was told. They're on schedule for the 24 like completely revamped thing. But like, look, we'll just hijack this Stanford Hawaii game to talk about this. If you are listening
2
to
weeks
this,
in a row of
and you're an
Vanderbilt
SEC
Stadium
fan,
talk. Love it.
If you are, but here's why. Because if you're an SEC fan listening to this, and we know the most popular teams in our listenership, thanks to the listener survey. If you're a Georgia or Auburn fan visiting this year, take a deep breath, show up early, and endure. Because
it's going to be worse than it usually is.
Well, no, normally it's just like, oh, hey, it's a small stadium. I can get in and out. I can walk there from a hotel I'm staying at and then go to the bars. Like, in all the pointing and laughing that you did all those years, now you're like, they have heard you and they're making a really nice stadium, but it ain't there yet. It is a literal gravel pit that you're going to be navigating. Good luck. Anyway, there is a quarterback at Hawaii. His name, and Braden, with a Y, because this is the godless country we live in, Shager. Braden Shager, God bless him. It's a really good Gen Z quarterback name. They have a quarterback. He can sling. It's a Timmy Chang offense, so sling it is basically sort of the modus operandus. It is modern run and shoot. I get it. It's a Vanderbilt thing, and I'm not supposed to make any sort of inferences on week 0. But boys, guess what Stanford is? It's a rebuilding nerd school, which is exactly what they just played. So they're at home in Hawaii. I like the idea of Hawaii's offense making this way more interesting than I thought this affair would be. Because Stanford right now, y'all, is also, let me wrap that metaphor all the way around us, in a rebuild.
Yeah, I think it's, as far as like the late night Hawaii game on a Friday, let alone not even a Saturday on week 1, pretty good television. I'm curious to see if the Stanford situation that he is taking over is like bad or bad.
If you're curious about Stanford, like check. I mean, what's that offense going to look like? Like how old Stanford are we going to be in week 1 of the new run?
I think not completely.
What can they do?
I don't.
With that
it's not going to be
like,
David Shaw 2.0. Like that's not the way Sac
right.
State
But like
played.
what like how are you modifying off to like with that personnel group? So that's worth watching as well.
Saturday, the big day, 11 a.m. God's time on Fox. Colorado at TCU, or as the promos to this game have put it, Deion Sanders against a Big 12 power. Shout out Chris Vanny at The Athletic for pointing that one out. So you have a team.
I was watching. No, hold on. I was watching.
Wait, I haven't seen this, so I need an explanation.
Yeah. So Godfrey, I was I just had on the Texans and Saints played preseason game last night. It was the last preseason game.
You dirtbag sicko. Dirtbags. Continue.
I was doing fantasy drafts. It was background noise.
Okay. I'm sorry. You were doing a fantasy draft. That makes it better.
But it was on Fox. So they were promoting the game. And they had 4 people just like dressed up as Deion Sanders was at the spring game. So cowboy hat, vest, black shirt, I ain't hard to find on it.
Wait.
They were, yes. They were on the field. They were on the field and in the stands,
NFL game?
In the Superdome. Yes, in the Superdome.
Like
and
a viral stunt?
This was not Ralphie, I'm sure, but they had a buffalo as a prop or as a promo prop.
Like a stuffed one.
Real deal.
Not a live buffalo.
Real deal on the field in the Superdome for this promo of this game.
You mean a live one?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Like probably not Ralphie, but could have been like a cousin.
Whoa, back the fuck up. It's 130 degrees with humidity in New Orleans right now. They had a fucking buffalo in the Superdome?
If they said it was stuffed, not entirely sure. Again, the volume was not exactly on loud here to hear the regaling commentary of Saints and Houston Texans third stringers. But I looked up multiple times, and yes, during the promos to this game, they had people dressed up as Prime with a buffalo in the Superdome for a week 3 preseason game.
By the way, local podcaster who makes fun of my interest in like Conference USA football will watch third string Texans players.
I'm scouting.
So, Richard, what do you think here with regards
to? They had a live buffalo. They had a live.
Steven, let's move on.
Fox.
Thank you. We understand. Understand it was a buffalo.
Weirdo.
That is a thing that Fox would do. Do you think, Richard, that Colorado has the chops to not get run off the field in this game?
No.
Okay, I don't really either, although I'm leaving open the possibility that they score a few explosive play touchdowns because they do have the skill guys.
I mean, look.
Yeah.
It's week 1. I'll sort of charge anything to general week 1-iness. I like you just if you're in that TCU locker room, okay? You just spent 12 games culminating in a Fiesta Bowl win over Michigan and then nothing else, in which you were, doubted, don't belong here, are lucking your way into this, yada, yada, yada. Then, after that Fiesta Bowl game, you then had months and months of nothing, in which you, again, I don't know if doubt is the right word, but like nobody's talking about TCU in this game.
They're the Washington Generals in this game against a one-win team. They played in the national championship game, and they are the less
whose fault
popular
is that?
team in a one.
Whose fault is that?
I don't often, and you guys know I don't often do the kind of like nobody believes in a stick, and I don't think this is even a nobody believes in TCU as far as it's nobody's acknowledging that TCU will also strap it up in this game. Like it's more of that, which I just think is kind of funny. It's in Fort Worth. Everybody on this podcast thinks I can kind of speak for everybody here when I say, like, I don't think Colorado's going to be very good this season at all. And it's not just a byproduct of their schedule. It's a byproduct of I see that team and I think they are small and not necessarily
the byproduct of that roster.
Not necessarily ready to play high-level Power 5 football or Power 5 football at this point in time. So, okay, I know it's kind of cheating, but okay, sure, we're bringing it back this year. Minority Coach of the Week in an interesting schematic spot. Again, not an achievement award and not even a predictor or portending of success. It's just kind of looking at a game and saying, hey, there's a minority coach and he's in an interesting spot here. Fucking Deion Sanders' first game at the FBS level against not a cupcake pushover in the big spot before 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Okay,
it's true.
Yeah.
I think every minority assistant coach that listens to the show, and there are many, I think they just channeled through my white ass and when I groaned, because Deion being classified as a minority coach is worth a conversation, like a 2-hour conversation that we could have another day.
And we will.
You're not wrong. I know. But shit, man, like this is one way to do it. And to Alex's point about what he does in hindsight at like JSU, I don't know if Deion is necessarily creating a paradigm that others can emulate or follow. And that's kind of been the quiet conversation in minority circles for years, is like, it's like, the whole each one teach one kind of thing. Like, this ain't that.
He is the most independently famous person to ever coach college football by leaps and bounds.
He might be the most independently famous black athlete in America too.
So all right.
Time to strap it up and see what Colorado can do in that game.
One thing I want to point out real fast in the football sense, guys, Kent State scored points against Georgia. They moved the ball against Georgia for a minute. Colorado's going to score this year. They're probably going to score against TCU. I don't think I'm too far afield on that. Like, here's the deal. The most annoying outcome, because this game has been annoying all off season, is that a TCU roster that for normal reasons is flipping over just because of the personnel changes would keep this game close, and that would only win by 10 to 13 to 14 points. And then we exit this with all of the wrong ideas in our head of Colorado's going to be really competitive this year. Colorado, look at what they did to a team that was in the national title. That is a possibility here.
Fresno State at Purdue, 11 Big Ten Network. 2 teams in transition. It's the post-Jake Haener moment for Fresno. He defined them for several years. It's obviously the post-Jeff Brom era for Purdue. I am interested in Hudson Card, Purdue quarterback. He wasn't bad for Texas last year when he spelled Quinn
It was a good get for them.
Yeah, and I think that it is worth tracking how he does in a very soft division. I've done some writing the last couple of weeks for The Analyst, which is part of Stats LLC, and they gave me access to some quarterback numbers from last year to write some stuff. Card did all of FBS with an 83% catchable ball percentage last year, and did that while throwing farther downfield air yards wise on average than the typical quarterback did in FBS. So that is something for me. Obviously at Texas, you got a wide receiver room that you don't currently have at Purdue. It's not currently the David Bell, Rondale Moore moment that Purdue had a few years ago, but they've got some players there. And I think that we might enjoy watching Hudson Card with Charlie Jones and company.
Where can people find that work?
TheAnalyst.com. It's a website worth checking out where I've done some freelancing the last couple of weeks.
Both programs here have really good coaches. I thought Purdue made a really good hire. I think Purdue has a really good staff, and I think Card is
Sorry, Charlie
indicative
Jones in the
of what they're
NFL now.
building
I knew
there.
it as soon as I said it, but I was wrong.
okay.
He
We're not here
ran
to
out of
judge.
time at Purdue. Thank you, Purdue fans yelling at your radios.
133 teams. 133 teams.
We're gonna have those moments.
I like both coaches at both programs in the long term. Obviously, Fresno's in like a rollover situation. Post Hainer, post a lot of talent on that team. So neither good coaching staff here has the roster that they want this season. So that will probably I just kind of shrug and move along. Last year, this would have been an amazing matchup, or maybe even in 2 years, this would be a great matchup.
The Purdue, I'm curious to see. I mean, this honestly, in not the bit way, could also be a minority coach of the week in an interesting schematic spot. I'm not going to use it yet because Ryan Walters has a lot of ball to play at this school this year. But I am curious to see what this defense looks like. Again, like few, if anybody, runs as much man coverage as Ryan Walters wants to do. Like a Don Brown level of man coverage.
Are you going
has
to
his
do that?
druthers.
Are you going to do that in year one though?
No, are you going to do that in week one? That is the question. Or in year one, that is the question.
Both, both, to be honest. Dude, imagine if Hainer was playing in this game. I mean, talking about risk reward. Speaking of risk and reward, Alex, tell me about the next game.
NIU,
but I'm not Alex Kirshner.
At Boston College, ACC Network. This is still on the 11 a.m. slate. This one's on here because I am wondering about it.
Because Thomas Hammock will beat your shitty ACC team.
I do not think they're going to win this game.
I don't think so either, but that's because I think they're going to be. I think they might not be good.
No, I think this is the game where they come in and you kind of realize the smashy works at one level and may not work at another level. Even though when we talk about another level, I don't think BC is that it's Boston College. It is a Boston College.
NIU did this.
NFL
NIU did this to Georgia Tech in week 1 2 years ago.
Okay,
that was 2 years ago. That was the year that NIU won the MAC. I don't think that's going to be this year,
right?
But we will see. Tennessee and UVA at 11 on national TV, network TV, ABC.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
In Nashville.
Nope. I'm going to be in Minnesota. I couldn't be happier about it. Broadway, everything below 10th Avenue is just going to be fucking terrible. And this game's in Nashville, by the way. That's why I'm complaining. I'm so happy I'm going to be in Minnesota. I want nothing to do with this. It's at the Titan Stadium. Yuck.
And congrats,
nothing
Steven.
against Tennessee. It's not even the programs. It's just the annoyance.
In a couple of years, Steven, you personally will be able to subsidize Nashville getting more games like Tennessee UVA in an updated Titan Stadium. Congratulations to you and your lovely wife.
No. And now they want to fucking put a Major League Baseball team here. Are you fucking kidding me?
Wow. Jesus. Look, I don't think Virginia's scoring in this game. I don't think it has a lot to do with how good Tennessee's defense is or isn't going to be this year. I'm kind of not even making a prediction there. Again, we've sort of talked about this. I've talked about this Tennessee offense in a sense of like, there's kind of a base level. It's like any club on Broadway that you have to be 21 to get into, right? If you're not 21, they're not going to let you in. If you can't at least slow Tennessee's offense down, they're going to make you look like you don't belong on the field. That happens, right? This offense is built to do that. If you can slow them down, stuff them, score in your own right, keep up with them in some way, shape, or form, it then obviously becomes a competitive game and we look within the margins. I don't think Virginia has an offense that's going to be able to in any way, shape, or form keep up. They're going to get bounced out of the paint. Tennessee's going to win by 1 million.
Yep.
Utah State at Iowa, FS1, also in the early slate. I'm tempted to say, not going to look at it and react strongly. But here's the thing, like last year at this time, and it was against the FCS national champions, but like Iowa played an FCS program and couldn't score. If Iowa scores in this game against Utah State, it doesn't mean that everything is fine and that they're going to have a good offense this year. But let's not don't come out here and score 14 points against Utah State. Like, we think this offense will be better. Like, yeah, Brian Ferentz watched the 25 points. It's very much on. But you need to maybe you don't need to, because Kirk Ferentz kind of defies need to in this regard, and he has for his entire career. But it would be really nice to see some ball movement down the field.
I'm going to give you 6. nepotism references for the rest of the year.
I didn't even make one.
I'm going to let you do.
I didn't even make
you
one.
Just did.
Yes, you
6.
did.
Yes, you did. 6 more.
You think I'm a crusader
None
about
of
this?
us
I'm just a
disagree with
crusader
you.
about bad offense. I don't do this with Kyle Shanahan
all right.
because he's great.
That's
God
good.
damn
That's
it. I'm
well
triggered.
done.
I'm out.
Well
But I'm
done.
right. But I'm just to be clear. I'm not like some HR crusader. I mean, I do believe in best practices, of course. But
Well, he sure can't draft quarterbacks, can he?
no.
Shout out
but
to
like
the fucking
I'm just
Niners.
saying, there's a thing about Iowa, and I think that
Holy
it would be
shit.
good. It would be good
Richard,
to see.
take over. I'm falling off camera.
It would be good to see Iowa
damn.
have a better offensive performance against a probably not great G5 than it did against South Dakota.
Utah State.
5. You get 5 nepotism references with Iowa for the rest of the year.
Utah State
5.
is not.
I just took one away for the Shanahan comment.
Utah State is not scoring in this game, and you know Utah State is not scoring. In this game,
Probably
okay?
not.
What is a Utah State under Blake Anderson? Because this is a, you talk about jagged. I mentioned jagged earlier with portal era G5. Utah State was as competent, efficient, and effective in that transition year, which is the year that things were really supposed to be bad. And then once they had some consistency in just terms of being there for a while, you saw portal exodus, you saw off-field issues. Like Blake Anderson was supposed to be anathema to the Gary Anderson no relation situation, Gary Anderson round 2 at USU. This may be one of those, oh yeah, that looks good hires that really does not pan out at all in Logan. So I'm not so much interested in USU in this game, but down the stretch this year, this was supposed to be a hire that was supposed to look very different than how it's looked.
2:30 ABC Peterson Bowl, Boise State at Washington might be the most compelling, or definitely is one of the most compelling quarterback matchups of the week. Taylor Green for Boise, Michael Penix Jr. for Washington, but I might be more interested in the trench game. We know that there's going to be good skill players on both sides of this game. Interested in how Boise runs the rock against Washington, because Boise, for all the talk about how successful Green was last year and what a quality running quarterback he was and a dual threat guy he was for Boise when he got that job, that team wasn't ultimately all that good running the ball for a team that has also George Halani and Ashton Ginty running it. That they just weren't an especially efficient running game, and they're playing a Washington team that got run on hard. So like, can Boise?
Alex, is that from? Sorry, is that assessment from like on a season average? Because I'm asking genuinely because the thing that I picked up in the Coach Anonymous stuff was that Boise figured itself out in like November. So I'm curious, is that just an aggregate thing? Or
they were, by the end of the year, they were one of the best running teams in the Mountain West, and like I think their overall numbers looked fine. But like they struggled when they struggled to run the ball, even like close to what you would expect for a team that had George Halani and that had Ashton Ginty, and then things picked up when Taylor Green took over. I am curious if they. Yeah, I should give them more credit in the way that I'm putting it. I think I'm clumsily reading.
No, I'm not undercutting you. I'm not undercutting you
right.
because I had the same. I had the same assessment, and so I'm curious. But
I think you're right.
I'm trying to figure it out because. Okay.
Because I think you're right, and I think that their bigger problem obviously was throwing the ball over the course of last year. I would like to see them do something against a Washington team that did not defend the run well at all last season.
I'm not really worried about that with Boise. I am worried about how a new, relatively, DB core is going to hold up against a Washington offense that should be Penix go boom, Odunze go boom.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
so mine is both of y'all's actually, where I think that like if I'm writing a script, I'm going to be watching this game. I'm very into this game. It's Peterson Bowl. I really do feel like this could be a breakout year for Washington in advance of big. I don't even want to talk about conferences, but this is. I think it's almost certifiable to say you're going to have big play scoring from Penix early. So your run-based Boise team. How off schedule are you going to make yourself if you're playing down? Because old Boise was versatile enough they could pass heavy out of weird formations. This new Boise that everyone's kind of fired up about, and that like I kind of got fired up about in the offseason, is a little bit more grindy, right? It's I want to see what they look like down 14, down 17, because old Peterson Boise was still effective in a comeback situation against P5s. The way this new Boise's built, they're going to test Green's passing because they're going to have to, because they're going to be down in this game.
Fellas, why do we do these things? Not because they're easy, but because they're hard. Rice at Texas, 2:30, Fox.
God. Why is this one on there?
Well, Richard, tell us. You know who the quarterback is for? There's more than one quarterback debut that I'm interested in here.
Okay.
There's more than one. Might even be more than two.
Yeah. The JT Daniels Texas experiment, the JT Daniels Rice experiment will go live against Texas in this game. That's what I meant. You've got a point, Alex, here that we may see an arch, maybe an arch sighting
and
in this
maybe
game.
Not just an arch, but I mean, might see 3 Texas quarterbacks if they win by as much as they should. Malik Murphy as well, who has gotten rave reviews and who seems to maybe be even kind of sort of ahead of Arch on the depth chart, though I'm not sure if push came to shove for a long stretch of the season that would hold. But you might see 3 interesting Texas quarterbacks who you want to know how good they are, plus JT Daniels. Steven shaking his head.
I'm shaking my head no. Yes, sir. It's a wonderful college football assessment. It speaks to your knowledge of the game. This is the most intrusive, rich fan base in college sports. The last thing Steve Sarkisian wants to do, if he is actually building some semblance, the thinnest membrane of the Nick Saban Kirby Smart structure as they go into the SEC, is give Arch Manning positive snaps, positive looks late in a blowout against Rice, because God forbid he come in and score. God forbid he lead 2 scoring drives up 36 late in against Rice, because you know what's going to happen when Alabama applies pressure for 2 fucking plays in a row against Quinn. You know what's going to happen? That fan base is going to start a war for Manning. You know what the Manning family is really good at? Shit like that.
I appreciate that your brain
about the Manning family in college football. I'm telling you, I have had ex-Texas coaches, plural, tell me how invasive a species the moneyed boosters are in this program. You have the most famous name in quarterbacking on the bench. Sark, God bless you, brother. I would shirk any potential of that shit for as long as humanly possible. And if Quinn's your quarterback, then ride him all 4 quarters and just run the ball out in the 4th.
USF at Western Kentucky, CBSSN. Western Kentucky is a lot of fun. Austin Reed was my pick for G5 Player of the Year. Malachi Corley, great wideout. They're fun. I'm wondering if USF might be more fun, because it would be hard to be less fun than it was for the last few years under Jeff Scott.
We'll see how Adwater instant offense this thing is going to be at USF with Alex Golesh. I don't know that it is. Don't know that it can be. Interested if it can or not against a Western Kentucky team that you are going to have to score points against. Because, as Alex said, Austin Reed, Malachi Corley, and friends coming to town, that could be a recipe for a whooping.
That just sucks for USF that this is the first game of a new coaching year. I just feel like this program never gets a break. If you ever needed Bethune-Cookman for a week 1 or something, this is... They're probably going to get the doors blown off of them in year 1 after was Jeff Scott there 3 years? Just a whole era of getting the doors blown off of you. So
yeah,
just sucks to start your run this way.
Realizing now that this is a Willie Taggart Bowl, and I'm wondering, though I should have researched this before the episode, if this was one of those where USF agreed to do this to lower the buyout or something like that. I'm just completely making this up on the show. It was not. Okay. Willie Taggart Bowl, though.
Do not believe it was.
At Western Kentucky.
His number is his number and jersey. There's a giant sign that's retired on the outside of the stadium. So it is literally the Willie Taggart Bowl.
2:30 on NBC and Peacock, or maybe just Peacock. It's one of those. Tennessee State at Notre Dame. FCS game for Notre Dame, which basically never happens. Might have literally never happened. And they will tell you about how exciting this is, that they are doing this.
Good for them.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Good for them. I live up against TSU, and if they're getting a fat check from this, they need a fat check from this. I'll go on a 10-second rant. TSU is not well funded. The state does not give it enough money in Tennessee. And hold your shock at that response. Please, I know you're all absolutely flabbergasted that TSU does not receive adequate funding.
Eddie George actually has a really interesting interview to this effect where he sort of lays it all out.
Yeah. So I live next to TSU, and go up to get your paycheck, man. And by the way, all bullshit aside, good on Notre Dame for doing this and scheduling this program. Like, I'll drive you, come visit me, and I'll drive you by the facilities. They need the money. It is what it is, and let's wait another week, y'all, before we crown. And I have nothing. I like Marcus Freeman. I'm not. Sam Hartman looked great. Let's just wait one more week before we talk about playoff Notre Dame. Okay.
Nobody is doing that, to be clear.
No one on this podcast is doing this. No one on this podcast is doing this.
I even think most Notre Dame fans are hoping for like a 10-2, but maybe that's just my impression from the internet.
Kirsch, come on.
We'll see.
Notre Dame.
Consult a local priest.
Cal at North Texas at 3, ESPNU. I think Cal might be kind of decent this year. I'm not sure that will give them much to build on because of the world falling around them, and this could be an ACC team as soon as 2024. But it could be something. They have, I think, they've certainly done a more prolific job portaling this offseason than we've seen in a long time, or maybe ever in the portal era from one of the rich, good at school schools. Yeah, like they've done it a little bit differently this offseason, and I'm intrigued to see what that looks like. Also, it's a P5 at G5 road game, at least for now. Again, things crumbling around Cal. We understand that. I'm just curious. It's also the first game for a new coach, Eric Morris at North Texas.
Yeah, I mean, Richard, we don't know what North Texas is. I'll rubberneck this thing if it gets close. I don't think it's fair to say, like, Eric Morris, I think, was a great hire for them and a good fit, but you got to install your whole thing and then go out and compete against technically a P5 in week 1. And, like, they do know defense. Wilcox is a very, very good defensive mind. If this was under different circumstances, I'd give North Texas a good puncher's chance here. I think otherwise it might just be really freaking ugly, as Cal is wont to play.
Yes, as Cal is wont to play.
Ugly.
UTSA and Houston, a rematch of an absolute belter last year.
So good.
This is a good one.
It's UTSA should have won that game last year. They should win this game this year. I'm not saying going away, but if I had to pick it, I'd pick UTSA.
I'm just going to stump real fast. I watch this game. I've talked a lot about both of these programs. This series should continue as a non-conference. It's good for Texas college football. These programs really thrive off of playing other Texas programs, and I don't want Houston to adopt the mentality that they got so angry at with the other old Big 12 schools when they were in Conference USA, when they were in the American. Keep this thing going. Don't worry about putting a commuter school in San Antonio on equal footing. Right now, this is the last game in the series. I checked all of their future opponent schedules. They're somewhat booked up, but Houston's going to lose a bunch of out-of-conference games because they had Colorado and Utah booked as out-of-conference games, and they're going to be conference mates soon. So there's a potential to keep this thing going. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's just good, too, for like those fan bases. It's easy to get to that game. You can make it into something, and so I would encourage them to do that.
Steven, it's an interesting point about don't do to the other Texas schools that are below your station what Houston got so mad when Texas did to it, boxing it out of the
Texas
Big 12
and A&M. I mean, like, yeah,
ago.
most schools, like it was bad enough that they were on the short end of the stick when the Southwest falls apart. But then like it was hard to get Texas teams on the schedule. That's why Houston didn't really care that Texas and OU were leaving because hey, you still play TCU, you still play Texas Tech, you still play Baylor. Like that's what they want. That's what they want. They want that old Southwest feel. Like there's no reason why you can't add San Antonio in there. And by the way, like just for recruiting purposes, it makes a ton of sense. They're two huge cities. I think people know how big Houston is. San Antonio is a top 10 city, I think, by DMA and by just overall population. Like it's freaking huge. It's a great town too. So it would just, to me, like, don't do the ULM Tech bullshit for 30 years. Like just get a trophy and play the game.
I'm excited about the UTSA offense, even outside of Frank Harris Jr., who everyone, I think, understands is great. They lost to Kari Franklin, one of their several really good receivers to Ole Miss, but they kept a couple. Kept Josh Cephas, kept Corian Clark. Oscar Cardenas, the tight end, who's been there a long time, made some huge plays for them, is still there. These guys are going to be fun. And that's my chance to say that because I think I was not on the American preview when you were both singing their praises. So I'm excited to see what they can do in this game.
Frank for Heisman.
Well, yeah, Frank Freshman. At Wazoo at Colorado State, 6 on CBS Sports Network. Richard, what do we say about Colorado State?
Call me when you win something.
It would be a nice sit rep for like just how it's going under Norvell, but at the same time, like it's hard to create a barometer when you have a decent team coming in. Probably in need of another FCS opener to build some momentum there. They're going to be 0-1 again.
Wazoo should probably destroy them, but I guess on the other side, if they don't, that would be a nice sign that Jay Norvell is getting things stabilized and going in a positive direction after Colorado State threw away several years on the Steve Addazio thing.
I'm not sighing because of Jay Norvell. I'm sighing because I may or may not have hosted a podcast for 3 years saying stuff like, Mike Bobo's going to get it going there.
Well, this is what we say about Colorado State. It's the on-paper program, and this is a chance with a better team than you coming in to show that you're making some strides. North Carolina.
Here's hope for white people.
Yeah, there is. North Carolina, South Carolina, Charlotte, 6:30 ABC. Richard, you're going to love this quarterback matchup.
Yeah, Richard, this is your quarterback thing here because you go ahead and do that before I'm glib.
Well, yeah, look, this is Spencer Rattler on one side, who, as we know, was in last offseason, didn't pull all my shares out, left a few in the tank, and they did pay off when we IPO'd against Tennessee late in the season.
Clemson
too.
And Clemson, yes, Clemson. It's one of those things where they could score a lot against North Carolina because of North Carolina's general North Carolina-ness, and then it's still not really portending one way or another. I think it's one of those things where it's like, if they can't score against North Carolina, maybe we're dialing back a little bit of the optimism that we have had for South Carolina in this coming into this season, or at least that I had for South Carolina coming into this season. It's North Carolina's defense to an extent. So let's just see things go boom in this game.
Hang on. Every year we overanalyze one of these games, but like a week one, it's usually a week one out of conference game that we just overanalyze the shit out of. And it ends up either not mattering or just not representing what the actual sum total will be. This will probably be that game.
6:30 CBS, Texas Tech at Wyoming. Godfrey, you got a home field Wyoming shirt on, if I'm not mistaken. You're going to be excited.
Home field Wyoming, yeah. Steamboat, Powder River, let her buck. I know the difference. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Wyoming's going to be a grindier team than what Texas Tech normally sees. I'm not going to sell this as an upset. I am going to sell this as upset potential, and that I do think Wyoming is quietly under the radar of a revamped Boise in the Mountain West and could be very, very good last year. The other thing that kind of defies logic was that Wyoming going into 22 got the shit portaled out of them, and yet were better for it and ended up producing a better season than they should have just based on the personnel that they lost. And they're returning almost everybody there. Now, here's one thing that we know about Craig Bull's Wyoming teams, if you want to talk a little NFL right now. It does not matter. If you have a Pro Bowl NFL quarterback, you're going to do what the Wyoming offense is going to make you do. So they don't have a obvious quarterback here. Incumbent kid whose name I just completely forgot because there's 133 teams on this show. He was out. They had a walk-on, and they bounced around because of injury. It may not matter if they're as good with their backfield and their O-line as I think they will be. Texas Tech, dude, I know they're ranked, but I got questions, man. Like this was close to sort of my pretentious snobby editor's pick of the week, but Tyler Show's gonna be healthy because it's week 1. And I mean, I'm not trying to knock any college football player for having health issues because this is a violent game, but he has been inconsistent because of his health. He will play in this game because it's week 1. Wyoming has a really nice history through multiple coaching staffs of thumping these sort of I don't want to call them pretenders because I think Texas Tech is doing everything that they can correctly right now, but this is what they do. Missouri, Tennessee, Ole Miss, they bring them up to Laramie and they beat their ass using ball control. And I think there's a potential for that, or Texas Tech's offense is as advertised and it's not going to matter.
Toledo at Illinois. MAC champs playing a pretty good Big Ten team that is replacing some people, some important people.
I want to see if Illinois on offense is going to not just be better, losing Chase Brown, new quarterback. What's this going to look like? We can make the Brett Bielema jokes all we want. It's not like it doesn't work. It's not like it hasn't worked the last couple of years. You know what I'm saying? So, all right.
I'm not making any more Brett jokes.
Right. So what's this going to look like on offense? is my question. I think they're going to be better in the passing game. I don't think they're going to flip an identity, but I do think they're going to be better in the passing game.
6:30, West Virginia at Penn State. I think in terms of atmosphere, local flavor, this might be the game of week 1. I think it will be a fun scene to watch. Also curious how NBC does doing a non-Notre Dame game for the first time in a while, honestly. The on-field here, I don't have a lot of questions about.
If you want to juice narrative, if you want to put a fucking stamp on it to start the season after 9 months of hype, leave no doubt in this game.
Huge story this morning, and it was paywalled on the Wall Street Journal about West Virginia as a university being in tremendous financial trouble. I know that athletics operates independently of university budgets. I don't need someone to tell me that in whatever social media you feel like clapping back on, that I do this for a living. I do think the atmosphere around eating coach buyouts and making a change right now is going to be hard. Neil is going to have to lose aggressively a lot, which there is potential for that this year. I'm just pointing out that like I'm kind of shoring up my take from the Patreon episode about him not being first on the firing line. Also, Penn State might beat the freaking shit out of them.
Right. Yeah.
Old Dominion at Virginia Tech, 7, ACC Network. This series is 2-2.
Yeah.
Granted,
these guys
both
know
losses
each other.
were not in Blacksburg.
These guys worked together. I think it was like almost a decade on various James Franklin staffs at Vanderbilt and Penn State.
Brent Pry and Ricky
I've talked
Rodney.
about the level of I've talked about the level of patience that Virginia Tech has had with Pry, because Pry came in, Bud Elliott and I, when he was on the show, we talked a lot about where Willie Taggart really failed on setting expectation when he came into Florida State. Brent Pry has done the exact opposite, I think, to his benefit. The problem is this, like, you got to go out and whomp these dudes. And I don't know if you're equipped to do that even still this year, because like they portal flushed. Can we make that a term? They portal flushed the wide receiver and running back positions, but they still have Grant Wells at quarterback. God bless him. They still don't have a good offensive line. And I don't think the defense is at a place yet in that Virginia Tech way where it can just dictate terms all game. And then you have the special teams do something crazy. Like they're just, it's going to be a 3-year process. They need to win this game, and I don't know if they're just naturally equipped to do it. It's going to be probably closer than they want it to be.
South Alabama at Tulane, 7 ESPNU. South Alabama, one of the great rush defenses in the sport last year. Tulane doesn't have Tajay Spears anymore. So what's that going to be about? How's Tulane going to move the ball? Michael Pratt stepped forward at quarterback. Something else? Richard, some really good safeties for South Alabama, too. 2 of them. Yam Banks, Jalen Jordan. One of the best safety duos in all of college football. Watch them when you watch this game, which you should, because it's a good one.
Tulane is going to turn around and hand the ball to whoever it is this year, starting at running back, don't know his name, and they are going to try to run flat the fuck over whoever it is in front of them. Pratt's a good quarterback, an intriguing quarterback. Sincere Haynesworth at center is one of the better players in the country at that position. They're going to do what they're going to do. And they ain't going to deviate away from it, but obviously losing Tajay Spears is not exactly thrilling.
This is my like tasting menu, chef's choice, whatever. I don't know. I got to come up with a better term. Pitchfork new music. Like, I think this game is going to be really even. Personnel losses for Tulane. I think South Al, I've talked to y'all about them all off season. Like, they didn't get a lot of national love because they were on the losing end of that weird Troy game, and then we just don't pay mind to the Sun Belt that much. Like, Tulane is faced with replicating that G5 darling status, and really, unless you are a G5 not named Boise, that's not possible. UCF came close in a series of years. South Al has players. They have a great secondary. They have more athletes than you would expect for a roster in the Sun Belt that isn't like, Billy Napier at his peak with Louisiana. This is going to be a game. This is a game you should watch. I know it's up against other bigger stuff, but that's why I'm being a hipster about it, and I'm telling you to tune in.
7 on ESPN Plus, Prairie View at Texas Southern. So this is the Labor Day Classic, won 8 times in a row by Prairie View, but a lot of people think Texas Southern will be better than them this year. They're picked ahead in the coaches poll of the SWAC before the year, where Southern, not Texas Southern, but just Baton Rouge Southern is the favorite to win the SWAC West. FAMU, on the other side, is the favorite in the SWAC East. So this one's interesting, where a lot of people are thinking that the team that's been held down in a traditional start of September game might beat the rival this year. We'll find that out. Ahmad Antoine, good running back for Prairie View.
You want to talk about builds and slow builds as they are concerned? Texas Southern has and is a slow build. Clarence McKinney took it over in, I believe, 2019, and they were just a smoking crater. And it's been blood from stones, won 5 games last year. Again, when I say he's been there since 2019, they won 5 games last year, and that's progress forward. You understand that how much of a smoking crater this thing was when he took it over. McKinney's a big Houston guy, worked at Houston, I believe is from Houston, and worked at A&M as well. So he is a son of this area. So yeah, it's an interesting spot for these two programs in that game.
Sam Houston at BYU, 9:15 FS1. This will provide some idea of how ready Sam Houston was to come up from FCS to FBS. BYU's a tough intro because they're big and old and physical.
Are they going to just be violent again?
Probably.
Are we going back to that BYU?
I mean, I don't know if this game will tell you whether we're going back to that or not. I mean, this is one that could get late early.
I think that James Madison last year might have, because we talked about them a lot, and they got a lot of attention relative for what they were in the conference they were in, about like how they came up and they were just ready for that action physically. Even when you're coming up from FCS to FBS, you got to fill up a lot of depth quickly. Sam Houston is not going to have that size and physicality right off the jump, I don't think. And BYU's a tough first game of the year. Tough first game of FBS, if I'm correct about that. Might not be. We'll see. Coastal Carolina at UCLA, 9:30 ESPN. This is a fun scheme game. Maybe less fun now that Jamie Chadwell's gone and Tim Beck is there at Coastal. But the Coastal offense, kind of the shotgun triple that has gained a lot of renown in the last few years. If we'll see how much they still do it, because they have Grayson McCall still at quarterback, even though Chadwell's gone, against Chip Kelly, whom the two of you did a really informative patreon.com/SCD special about just a week ago, where you really dove into what Chip means in this moment of college football schematic evolution. I'm excited to see what he does, and I'm excited to see if Dante Moore plays, the 5-star freshman.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we know who UCLA is trotting out there at quarterback. No. And either way, I just think you should probably pay attention here, because like we talked about on the podcast, UCLA and Chip Kelly's kind of entire thing is evolving and figuring out how to be new and how to iterate, and how to be kind of at the cutting edge in a way that you may not realize. So how do they do that without DTR, who I think even Chip has joked about was at the school for like 6 years?
There's a lot of unfair expectations when you follow up a run like Chadwell had at Coastal, but it boils down to Tim Beck, don't break Grayson McCall. You have 1 year to get as much as you can out of him to hopefully build your transition. So don't break him. And I don't think they will, but.
Sunday at 11 Central. Football on a Sunday. What will they think of next? Northwestern and Rutgers. Congrats to the Big Ten on getting that bag, and congrats to Viacom CBS on having this one. But actually, it's a big game for Rutgers. Rutgers needs to win. They need to win this game.
It's Paramount owned now.
Excuse me.
I think that Paramount owns a whole kitty. So I got to watch soccer on something called Paramount Plus.
Viacom CBS is still I believe up at the tippy
Paramount
top.
Is underneath Viacom.
Yeah.
Paramount. All right.
Get your org chart.
US. I think we may have mentioned this in the wake of the Northwestern stuff. Northwestern was going to be bad without any of this stuff. Northwestern was going to be bad with Pat Fitzgerald as its head coach, in my humble opinion.
Now they could be super bad.
Now David Braun is their acting head coach, with Skip Holtz being there as a steady hand to guide. Could still be bad. This is the kind of game, though, that Rutgers can march in and win, and you're like, okay,
yeah,
it can happen.
Needs
resume
to be.
win for Rutgers. I don't know who I'm making fun of more when I say that.
No, in Rutgers is going to have a hard slog to scare a bowl game this year, but obviously you have to win this game. And if Rutgers wins this game, then you start to wonder, okay, you string a few other together, you've got your non-con. and maybe Rutgers makes a little more of a season than we think, but that's only possible.
Vol fans,
if you win this game.
Tennessee fans, you're officially allowed to unleash the full capacity of Shiano jokes after this season. So they're 5 and whatever this season. Get them off.
FAMU and Jackson State, 2 on ESPN. FAMU wins this, and the SWAC East is probably going to be theirs. Jeremy Musa, big-time FAMU quarterback to watch. I, of course, am very interested in FAMU because I did a FAMU Dead Letters episode on the Patreon this summer, and I've just taken a renewed interest in them being one of the best programs, certainly in the SWAC, but also maybe making some FCS playoff noise, which they have gotten into the tournament in the last couple of years. Curious how they do against Jackson State at 2 on ESPN.
Well, remember, Alex, they've got into the playoffs because they were not eligible.
Yes, because Jackson State had
Celebration
taken
Bowl.
it. Yes.
Right.
Because Jackson State was in the Celebration Bowl.
Yes, and also got snubbed from the playoffs last year, again, because Jackson State was in the Celebration Bowl. So there's an interesting...
How does the SWAC and FCS have a dumber postseason format than the FBS?
Because I wouldn't
the Celebration Bowl makes everybody a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's
I know,
dumb.
I get that. I'm just like, I'm going to say it's dumb because if the playoff structure that determines the national champion is less lucrative than a one-off bowl game, you might want to fucking revisit the playoff structure in NCAA because y'all got the money. So
I understand why they do it, and I like that there is a Black College Football National Championship game, but there's layers to
I
the-
would like
to
it
that
a lot
ranking.
more if those really good Black college football teams would compete. Would be in like it would make sense for them to play North Dakota State and like throw the Ivies in and like let's do what we always do in America. Like I get why they're doing it. It just sucks that it's so literally segregated now.
Some would argue
The
doing.
FCS could do better.
Some would argue we are doing what we've always done in America.
I'm going
Ooh.
to do a quick skip ahead.
Did I set that up or did it just happen?
I'm going to do a quick skip ahead, and then we're going to come back to something for Sunday night. On Monday, Clemson at Duke, 7 on ESPN. This one shocked me to learn it wasn't in Atlanta, which now hosts the Monday game.
Oh, you thought it was a Chick-fil-A?
Oh, yeah.
Thought it was a Chick-fil-A thing, but this one is
Clemson,
actually...
They're not
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A games anymore. I'm writing about that in the post this week. It is, by the way, those games are Aflac kickoff games. Rolls off.
Very
the tongue.
good. So this one's in Durham. Duke had just a phenomenal year one, getting better across the board in everything you could imagine under Mike Elko. And now how do you follow that? It sure looked like they were pretty close to what we understand to be Duke's ceiling last year. How do you follow that after just a tremendous
don't.
first year?
You don't, but before Richard talks intelligently about a national title contender, let me just say this. No one wants to talk about Duke being good because everyone hates Duke, which, hey, I'm not here to argue that, Bomani. But they are good. Riley Leonard. This was in my notes somewhere this summer. Do you know his mom texts him that you suck before every game because she like has a loving way of like getting him mad. I love that as a parent. Anyway, Riley Leonard had a fantastic season last year. Are they going to win that many games every year? No, but the knock on them winning the games they did, they were like, well, look at the overall win percentage of those teams that they beat. Yo, it's the ACC. They churn out mediocre, okay? Like they are a gas station fast food restaurant when it comes to the middle of of their product.
Yeah.
So there is capability to do that. They're not going to win 9-10 games every year, but like the schedule is definitely tougher this season. They're probably not going to win that total. In fact, I would go ahead and bet that they won't. But like Elko's a damn good defensive coordinator. This game will be interesting for about 5 seconds as he like gives Klubnik some fun things to look at and pick apart. But like, yeah, from a talent disparity, Richard, yes, go ahead. Clemson it's Clemson.
They have not. You know, the funny thing is, these two teams have not played in like 5 years. They haven't played in a while.
I didn't know that.
I think that, look, Duke took advantage, I should say, of every single break humanly possible last year.
Yes.
It's not to take away from them. The game was there to take it, and they took them multiple times.
Yes.
This obviously is a bigger capped skin. This is a Clemson that I think does come into this season with something noteworthy to prove, even though it's hilarious because they still won 10 games last year. So understand what that is. They could make Duke's offense look very, very bad.
That's Monday. That's the capper. But it feels appropriate to cap this show with what I think everyone agrees is the most exciting game of week one by a pretty wide margin. This isn't a year where you've got every time slot stacked with ranked versus ranked and just blockbuster after blockbuster. FSU and LSU. Orlando hosting this game. 6:30.
Thank God it's happening.
6:30 on Sunday. ABC game of the week. They played a close game last year. Both of these teams have plausible playoff paths this year. It's extremely excited. I'm just extremely excited, but I'm also wary, Richard, of overanalyzing because of what we saw last year when this was a complete slop fest and then both teams had very good years. So what would you make of what we are about to see in Orlando on Sunday night?
I think you should and can expect obviously a better quality of game, ending aside last year. I think that you can and should expect that these two teams are, I think, more of a finished product. Yes, week one-iness can happen with any game on the schedule because it's week one and that nobody's played anybody. But I need a good football game out of this. These are two teams that you think are on not just an ascendancy, on a, hey man, at least for Florida State, hey man, it's about that time. So again, I think enjoy the game, enjoy the result, unless it's an absolute fucking smoking on one end. There's not a ton to take from it, and I don't think it will be on either end. I think it's just going to be a good football team between two good football teams that we will look back on, I think, at the end of the season and understand that may not have had too much bearing on the season either way, but it was a hell of a game.
I would agree with you that I think it'll be close. I don't think we're gonna have a blowout. I don't think it's a disaster for either team with a loss. All that, there's bigger playoff implications, which I think positively. I think like we need to schedule this kind of stuff more often to where you're building resume games and you can absorb the loss and move on. But at the end of the year, it's going to be strength of schedule, intent of schedule, all that stuff. That's all good. I would modify one thing Richard said, which is, what did you say for Florida State? That, hey, it's time now. Y'all, you beat Alabama in year one in Baton Rouge. It's time now. They're expecting you to go to Atlanta this year. Again, they're expecting you to compete with Georgia and hopefully beat Georgia this year. LSU has a ton of expectations. I feel the same way I felt about this game last year, which was, I don't know. I'm really confused about this game in terms of the outcome, except this year it's because they both have risen accordingly in talent level, as y'all have said. I don't think it'll be a sloppy slugfest. This is year 2 for Brian Kelly. I think both those coordinators might be future head coaches, and I think they've done a really nice job there. So I feel equally good about both teams this year going in. So that's a difference from the sort of like shrug, hey, something weird will happen or like something funny could happen, which it did last year in this game. By far, this is the heavyweight fight of week one. And I mean, I'm glad it exists because this is as poor a week one schedule as we've seen in a while. In terms of just marquee, mainstream big games.
The thing that
what's the second best game this weekend?
Well, I think to be honest,
Boise State-Washington.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I think we have learned a lesson here to an extent, because remember, and this is a week one proverb, a good week one means a fucking awful week 2. That's one thing.
We have a mega game. We have a mega game coming in week 2, which helps.
The other thing is, I think that this is a season in it is really dripping with irony because of, gestures at everything that's not on the field. But this is a season where the conference games and the conference slate, I think, is going to be deep, compelling, and good throughout, which, because of gestures at everything, is deeply ironic and darkly funny.
It's going to be a really hard, this college football season, more than any I have either paid attention to or covered in my 42 years on God's earth. This will be the hardest season I've ever seen to stay in the present tense. And I think that hurts college football tremendously. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope compelling and new and unique things happen. And this is off the subject of like a week 1 schedule or week 2 schedule, but y'all, Georgia and Oklahoma were supposed to be playing this week. There were things that happened that were affected by all of this tectonic shifting below us, and it's going to be an effort to be a fan of college football in the present tense for a little while, and that's unfortunate.
I don't know. I think that's off base, because I think every single year, to various extents, and obviously more in the last couple summers than ever before, we've done this. You come off of 6-7 months of and then they play the games and you remember why we do this. You remember why you care. You remember all this kind of stuff. The kids,
Yeah,
the games,
definitely. But
they always take you for a ride. And
we've come off of summers of conference realignment. We've come off of summers of shocking moves. We've come off of controversies. We've come off of crippling, emotionally voiding scandals. Right? We're not dealing with a Baylor or a Penn State. We're not even dealing with a funny one like Ole Miss or Hugh Freeze. But what we're dealing with, I think, there's a sum total to the feeling in college football right now. It's been 3 full years of realignment, shockers. We're entering week 1 with this sort of weird, limping, useless appendage of a realignment story. And like, what are the Bay Area teams? Are they joining the ACC? What the hell does this even mean anymore? No one. Our own listeners have said, God, stop. Like we want to be in the present tense. We want college football. It seems ceaseless. And the problem is when you combine that with the last year of the 4-team playoff and the Bulls still trying to vie for some sort of like relevance, there are just almost insurmountable amount of not questions necessarily, but uncertainty. And the schedule reflects it in week 1 now. It's going to be hard. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but thank you, Meddlesome ESPN, who owns the sport anyway, for putting these 2 teams together with 2 bowl sponsors. I mean, the Bowls put this series together. The Sugar Bowl wanted to kick off last year. Then ESPN was able to get the Citrus involved to have a call and response game, basically. So, normally I bring the hammer down on that meddlesomeness, but like, look, if not for the billionaire broadcast interest here, like it would be a really forgettable week 1. And as the G5 guy, like I do think we need these major non-con games. Do they have to be played in NFL stadiums? If that's the only way, I'll take it. Like I'm not opposed to that anymore. I get that Alabama doesn't want to do it 12 times in 12 years, but like, I'm not faulting Charlotte or Atlanta or these cities that are doing this and doing this effectively if it means that we get Georgia Clemson. Like that's a good football game. Alex, was I wrong? Is the number 2 game of the week Boise State and Washington
on paper,
or the Carolina Bowl?
Yeah, it does.
Or the Carolina Bowl. Yeah,
I do think that these weeks that look bad from afar have a knack for being more fun than we think, and that has happened for as long as I've been covering the sport. But Godfrey, you said something funny that I'll part with, and then let you guys take us home. That you said, thank goodness for the meddlesome corporate TV partners putting this game together. I've been thinking a lot about like how I feel about the 2023 season fitting into the arc of the history of the sport and also my processing and enjoyment of it. And I think that some of the things that we're going to see go away after this year are tragedies to lose. Like, I think that the Pac-12 going away is horrendous and a sort of national tragedy for college football. I don't want to use overly dramatic language, but I think it's really bad for college football. I think that the move to the 12-team playoff is going to inexorably change some things in ways that are bad but also good, that will at once make regular season games matter less and more.
Net positive.
Yeah.
Net positive. We all say net positive on that. Like, we're all happy about 12 teams, right?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah. Okay. Just checking. It does suck to have one more year because like the number 5 and 6 team are going to be like, fuck,
Yes.
I get that part.
Yes.
But I think that the third piece of this that I've been, I don't know, trying to reconcile my dissonance about, is that in a way, the corporate meddling in the sport, I think, is also pushing us towards some progress, because every time the Big Ten or the SEC or the Big 12, and I understand those 3 schools did these things for very different reasons, one for survival, the others for domination. Every time they do these obviously anti-athlete, like ridiculous destruction of tradition type things that they do in the name of the TV dollar, that shows up in some legal filing that is in front of the NLRB or some court, pushing the sport towards eventually being more honest about its labor source and how you compensate it. Like, I think that the growth of college football into a TV property is gonna be the thing that ultimately pushes it over the edge into being more honest about itself and paying its players. And perhaps if you're listening to this and that sounds like, he's just making this up to feel better about covering a sport with tremendous flaws in its economic model, perhaps I am, but that has been on my mind as well. that like all of this junk,
Yeah.
like the fact that you're going to put the USC and Washington track teams or whoever on these flights to the East Coast however many times a year, yeah, it's dumb. And also it's going to point towards eventually better things happening, at least for college football, though I'm not sure about for Olympic sports. And
That's because
there's some comfort in that.
I will leave you with one thought. It's not antithetical to progress to value geography, tradition, and logic. It's okay to grow up in one part of the state and want to beat the other part of the state really bad and then play a team in the next state and not drive 12 hours to do it. To be able to throw some stuff in a truck, to set up outside, eat some food, drink some whatever, and go in and enjoy yourself. It's okay to want that. It's okay for you to want that to be reasonably priced. And it's also okay for, if you can't make it that weekend, to tune in for a reasonable price on some sort of television or device to watch your team. Like, those things shouldn't be at odds with one another. No one asked for this, but there's still a lot of good in this sport. I look forward to finding it with y'all this year. And basically what I'm saying is watch more Sunbelt.
Football!
Oh, man. He's so loud. We gave him the good mic.